And welcome back, everyone. This is the X Zone. I am Rob McConnell. We're coming to you from our broadcast center and studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. If you'd like to send me an email, same address for the last 29 years, xzone@xzoneradiotv.com, on all social media sites, X-Zone Radio TV. And for all the programming we have available for you 24/7, 365 on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, www.xzbn.net. And for the programming we have on the X-Zone TV channel, that's channel 21 on Simul TV, www.simultv.com. First of all, I want to thank everybody for once again sending me all their different recipes from my cold. And as usual, 99.9% of them all include alcohol, so thank you very much for that, guys. Appreciate it. And I'm feeling a little better today, thanks to Dr. Jack Daniels and his crew of disciplinarians and the members of the X-Zone Nation. My guest this hour is a gentleman who is from my home territory of St. Catharines, Ontario. As you know, I was at CKTV for a number of years, and I enjoyed our stay at CKTV, but as the show and the networks grew, so did we. So it's always great having somebody back from St. Catharines with us. And tonight is Joshua Black. He's a research into the area of grief dreams with a special focus on dreams of the deceased. He is currently in his final PhD at Brock University, continuing to investigate grief dreams, and will be graduating this year. Joshua has published scientific literature in the area and is considered to be one of the leading researchers in the field. To raise awareness on the topic, Joshua wrote the children's book, Dreaming of Owl, that can be found on Amazon. Additionally, he has started a website, griefdreams.ca, Instagram and Twitter accounts at Grief Dreams, Grief Dreams Facebook group, and the Grief Dreams podcast. His website is griefdreams.ca. And Joshua, welcome to the X-Zone.
Thank you for having me.
So tell me, what got you interested in grief dreams?
Well, there's a long story and a short story, but what happened really was my father died, and when that happened, my world turned upside down, and I was, for about 3 months there, I was just so depressed. I was in like a really dark state. And then I had this dream, and I had this dream of him where I was able to say goodbye and to tell him that I loved him, and that was something that he died so suddenly, never got a chance to do. So when I woke up, the crazy thing was I felt completely different. And I always put that in my back pocket. I never told anyone about it, but that was the first moment that, I'm like, oh, this is different than my other dreams. Like there's something new here. And I just, it helped me great. And I went forward and finished my undergrad. And then I started working with the bereaved, and they started asking about these dreams. And I wasn't trying to I didn't really ask about them. But they were asking me questions about why didn't I have dreams, or, how come I'm having negative dreams? And so that's when I decided, look at the literature, and there wasn't really anything there to help them, which was really shocking to me. And so that's when I said, I got to figure this out. It's bugging me. I want to know some answers. And so that's when I found a university, Trent University, to do my MA at, and I learned more than I ever could there. And then I was able to do my PhD at Brock.
Now, your PhD is in what?
It's in psychology.
Psychology, okay.
Yeah.
Isn't grief a natural way of us healing ourselves through, whether grief is by the passing of a loved one, or even the change of a job, the change of a move, a change of a location, any major change within our psyche?
Yeah, any kind of deep sorrow, right? That's what grief is. And a lot of people, when they think of grief, they think of dying or death, right? So actually, like, a more proper term for these dreams is probably bereavement dreams. But a lot of people didn't really know what that meant, so that's why I termed it grief dreams.
Now, how do you study these dreams? How do you investigate grief dreams?
Well, for my MA at Trent, I looked at what were the common themes people were having, if they even existed, right?
Right.
And if they were. And then the other thing I did was, did they change over time? I looked at that. And then for my PhD, looking at, what factors predict dreaming of a deceased loved one. And then also, are these, common? And then the other thing is, why are they happening? Yeah. So, what's going on here? And there's a couple different theories I looked at, and they all sort of, have face value to the data, what's going on. So I collect them actually online. It's probably one of the best inventions that the internet has saved grad students, is that you can collect data now online. And I got so many. For my PhD, I've done 4 studies, and all the samples are above 200 people, which is really amazing. And yeah, so within there are questionnaires, and then I ask about the dreams they've had. And yeah, and that's basically how it is. And we then do the analysis afterwards.
What is the physiology of a dream? How does a dream work?
Like, what do you mean?
Well, why do people dream? How do they dream? What's the science behind dreaming?
We don't really know. We don't really understand it all. And that's the interesting thing on sleep. We still understand why we sleep, right? Like, we have theories, but we don't really have concrete evidence to basically support one theory over all others.
So what is the leading theory in how dreams work?
Well, one of the main theories is the continuity hypothesis. So this is saying how we dream, basically the dreams we have reflect our waking life in some way. And so this could be the things and tasks that we do during the day, or it could be the emotions we feel. It could be the problems that we're wanting solved that we can't find the answer to, and it can show up in our dreams. Like, answers can come that way, and a bunch of wish fulfillment things too, right? So if you're really desiring something, sometimes it can come into your dream. So the continuity hypothesis, it's a very broad thing, but a lot of research supports that. So if you're, let's say, really happy before bed, you're more likely to have more positive dreams. But if you're depressed or sad, you'll more likely have negative dreams. And so in general, people will have more negative dreams. So if you just look at like a general sample, most people will have a negative dream tonight. And that's more or less because they're just worrying before bed, right? Like, they're stressed out, life is tough, and it's very hard to have those moments of joy and that, stay with us. And then after trauma, when they look at these dreams, they become even more negative. So this is the interesting thing about dreams, right? So you can really tell a lot about where someone is in their mental state by looking at these dreams, to give you sort of a window into what they're dealing with.
Does everyone dream?
Yeah, so far no one's ever found someone that doesn't dream. The issue is about remembering dreams. So we're all producing dreams, but we're not all remembering those dreams, and that's the mystery too. And there's like a ton of theories on that and why that is. But that's still sort of one of those things that 10% of the population doesn't remember their dreams at all, even though they are dreaming. And we know this because when we put them in a research lab, and when we wake them up in REM sleep, they'll report something. They'll report a dream. And so this is the interesting thing, is like, why aren't they remembering? And even those people who are remembering dreams, the interesting thing is too that you can fluctuate your dream recall, which is wild. So like, the more you value your dreams, the more you're actually going to remember those dreams as you move forward. And our culture is kind of bad at promoting the dreams itself and the usefulness of really understanding them in our culture.
Why are some dreams in black and white and others in color?
Who knows? I don't know. That's not, I didn't study that. But I'm guessing, there's probably something to do with, something to do with going on there. I'm not really sure. Yeah, I can't answer that one.
All right. So as a dream specialist, you just focus on grief dreams.
Yeah, because this is the big thing, is that there wasn't a lot of research in the area when it comes to, especially dreams of the deceased. So there's, when it comes to grief dreams, there's a lot of different types of grief dreams. There's sort of the type that's more symbolic. So the deceased or isn't mentioned in the dream at all. Then there's this other type of dream where they are mentioned by friends, or maybe by an angel, or by God, or there's like a building that resembles them in some way.
Right.
Then there's this third one where it's dreams of them. They're actually present in the imagery in some way. And that's what I really focus on, because that's what people were asking questions about. And the sad thing is, like, you got to understand, like, no one is being trained on this in thanatology or any kind of bereavement counseling. So what's going on is that when people are being asked these questions, no one knows answers. So they tend to give bad advice if they do talk. And if they don't, they tend to push it away, and they don't want to actually investigate it. They don't want to ask the questions about these dreams, even though they can be very informative, but there just wasn't any research. So that's why I focused 7 years of post-secondary school, from MA and PhD on this topic, just so we can actually start talking about it. When I first started talking about this thing, no one really, you didn't get a lot of like, oh my God, this is amazing. Like, I can't believe you're doing this. Like,
All right, Joshua, stand by. We've got to take our first break. Exonation, Joshua Black is our special guest. www.griefdreams.ca. And we'll be back on the other side of this commercial break as we continue here in the X Zone from our broadcast center and studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Exonation, Joshua Black is our guest this hour. www.griefdreams.ca. Joshua, I'm a little confused here because in the first segment I was asking you questions about how we dream and so on and so forth, and we don't have an answer. So how do we know by trying to interpret a grief dream based on no actual knowledge on how a dream works that we're giving the right information to the people who are seeking the answers?
Well, we know that, we are dreaming, and all we can sort of do is really take what they sort of share us, because a lot of people, because we can't even see the dream, right? Like if we could see the dream, it'd be a lot easier to analyze these things. But the reality is we got to go for self-report, and so people have to sort of indulge or discuss what they want to, and their memory could be, a little, could be accurate or not. But when it comes to these dreams, I'm not interpreting the dream. You got to understand that. Other people will do that. And that's, you got to ask them, how can you do this, right? With me, what I'm looking at is, are these dreams common, right? Like, and what's maybe like what factors are predicting people having these dreams? And also, why are some people having these negative dreams? And so this is sort of looking at more of some of the functions of these dreams, because,
right.
And that sort of can get at the, like, why is this even going on? So
okay.
I'm not interpreting these.
No,
dreams.
I understand that. I understand that. But I asked you how we dreamt. What was the physiology of a dream? And you said this is something that we still don't know. So if we don't know the physiological reason for why we dream, how can we take any interpretation or any data or any study and make sense of it if we don't know the mechanics behind it?
Well, we do that with all sorts of things, right? Like we don't know why we sleep, but yet we know it's important, right? So there's a lot of things that we don't know, and that's why science is, is so necessary in our culture. And as we sort of move forward, and the more technology we get, the more answers that we get. We do know when it comes to, there's two sort of phases of sleep, non-REM and REM.
Right.
We know when it comes to REM sleep, 80% of the time you wake someone up in that, you're going to catch a dream. In non-REM, it's around 50%. So we are dreaming throughout sleep. But for whatever reason, in REM sleep, it's a little different. So those dreams are a little different than non-REM sleep, and they tend to be more frequent. So there's theories onto like why that could be the case, but that's sort of really not my whole focus is sort of trying to talk about these grief dreams, because this is the stuff that, even though we don't know a lot about dreams itself, this is an important topic in our culture that people are discussing, yet we don't. But no one really has investigated it through a sort of scientific method.
Okay, so what do we hope to accomplish by studying grief dreams? We know that when somebody dies, there's grief. We know that for any major change in a person's life, there's grief. So what do we hope to accomplish?
Well, the first thing we need to understand is that is this common, right? Like, can we normalize this experience? Because grief itself, the issue people have is usually they don't understand what's common in grief. And so it scares them, and they sometimes think they're going crazy. And then they have all sorts of complications. And so then that's like just a whirlwind, right? Like once you start thinking something that, you're not dealing with it properly, you'll start making that actually true in your life. And you'll get worse and worse, even though it could be a very common thing. So for these dreams, what we're finding is that it's very common. So I did a study on spousal loss and partner loss, and 86% of those people within the first year dreamt of the deceased loved one. After pet loss, after 6 months, it was around 76% or something. And then after a miscarriage, they're dreaming of the baby that died, and that was around 50% of the time. And so the first thing is that these are normal for people to have these dreams. But you got to understand, people don't understand that. And that's why it's really important, because a lot of people who have these dreams, they say they think they're going crazy because they feel like they're the only ones that are having it. And the answer is no. Like, it's actually really common for you to have this. So then it goes to, okay, what kind of dreams are you having? Like, does that mean anything? Does that relate to your grief at all? Does that relate to anything? And that's sort of the question I had with people, is like, why am I having these negative dreams? And so with looking at the dreams itself, what's actually very interesting is that these dreams tend to be positive in nature, which shouldn't actually be the case. If you remember when I talked about the continuity hypothesis, that these dreams should be negative because they're in deep sorrow. But for whatever reason, when the deceased is in the imagery, these tend to be positive.
Is it possible because this gives the person who is in grief to have another moment of time with this loved one, this departed one, and gives them the opportunity of saying things that they may have wanted to say while the person was alive, but they never got the chance?
Yeah, well, that's what happened with me, right? And so it's like almost this continuing bond experience is sort of one of those theories that, maintaining a bond with the deceased is one of the things, grief experts say that, helps in our grief recovery. And so this is where people also get into like the visitation aspects of these dreams, because they're maintaining this bond that, is basically going beyond death, which is, we can talk more about that. But also this emotional regulation is another big aspect of grief. And when we're stuck in this grief, it's hard to do the work that we need to do. And these dreams, but if they give you these positive moments, when you wake up, you're elated, right? You have that sort of the increase in happiness, which can help you work on your grief a little bit better.
But is that a false reality?
Like, what do you mean?
Well, for example, if you dream of somebody who's passed away and you wake up feeling great, the fact is that this person is still gone. That's
true. That's very true. But in that moment, of that dream, you thought they were still alive.
That's what I meant by a false reality.
Yeah. And that can help with emotion regulation, right? And so you can get that whatever that heaviness away from you to then sort of work on some of the stuff. And the sadness will come back. It's not like most of these dreams people have it, they feel good, but they also feel sad too.
Sure.
Like, right? But it's the moment of actually they're feeling something new that they haven't really felt usually in a while. So,
okay, but by them getting a super high, then reality sets back in and puts them into a super low. Doesn't that also increase the chances of depression?
No, I wouldn't say that at all. I wouldn't say that it goes to a super low like it's a big thing. You gotta understand, some of these people who have these dreams, it's almost like there's just two people, right? There's those spiritual people who will then take some of these dreams as visitations, which has its own sort of high value to that. But there's also these other people who aren't spiritual. It's just like it was a good memory and they got to see him again. So for a lot of people, even though they know it's a dream, even when they wake up, they're still happy they got to see him another time. Where they weren't dead in a casket, sort of thing, right? So it's a better. So your last memory is not one of them actually, in a illness or death or dying.
But wouldn't a photo have the same effect if that's all there was to it?
No, not at all. Like if you must dream, right?
Sure, I do. Yeah.
Yeah, and so in those dreams, there's a sense of reality, and a lot of these people talk about these dreams being more vivid than vivid and more real than real. So in that thing, it's so different from a picture, because a picture, it's almost like imagination, but in the dream, because you believe it's real, there's something else going on there. And I still am amazed with, what else is going on here, because I believe it's not just the dream. I believe there's something else going on within the mind that's actually helping us, because what people say, and they spiritual or not, they have these dreams. There's a sense of love and peace that it's not even like a memory. Like there's a love and peace that they haven't seen before, and they haven't seen them that healthy before. So it's a very interesting imagery to have, because why don't we have it with other stuff? Like other grief dreams, right? Like if we lose a job, why aren't we having the boss come to us and say it's going to be okay? That doesn't happen.
Wait a sec. I beg to differ with you. I've heard stories of this happening where people have had jobs they've loved, they've lost that job and they've dreamed about being back in that job.
No, I'm talking about like the boss saying like you get fired, right?
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
I know people who have had that dream who've gone back to work and everything's great with the boss again. The boss brought them back.
No, I'm talking about when it actually, I know you're talking about more of like it's a memory kind of thing. I'm talking about like for these grief dreams,
Okay.
the impact is the deceased comes back and basically comforts them to say
Right.
it's going to be okay, right? Like, so it's acknowledging what's going on in the present.
Right.
What you're talking about is like they're calling back and it's like things are good and you're doing that.
Well,
That's like more like a memory, right?
But isn't that the same thing? Because
No.
you've got the deceased coming back and comforting the living. And in this dream where the person gets fired, in the dream they go back to work and everything is fine with the boss. And the boss says, okay, you're doing a good job. What's the difference?
Well, it's how it's being said, right? Like if you're, like I understand, like with the deceased, they're talking about the present moment and the person's suffering. So they're talking about their grief for the most part, right? There's other dreams that they're not. And there's there's some dreams that are like that, like what you're talking about, where it's like they're reminiscing or they're back together again and they're taking a walk, right? That's sort of what you're talking about with these sort of like work dreams. I'm talking about more of the other type of dreams where they're giving sort of this advice or they're comforting the bereaved in the sense of the grief. So they're saying stuff that's going to help them actually work through their grief process. So I don't know if you've seen work dreams of the boss basically comforting them and basically helping the person find a new job or feel comfortable finding a new job. That's what I'm talking about. That's the difference in the sense of how they're different, right?
Is it possible that this is a self-help or a self-healing mechanism that our body has, and it has really nothing to do with the departed, only the memory recall that is being manipulated by the mind in order to comfort the person who's having the dream?
That's one, yeah, it's one possibility for sure. And you sort of see that with, some of the memories and stuff that comes with that. But at the end of the day, it's like, why doesn't it happen all the time?
All right, stand by. We've got to take our news break. Joshua Black is our special guest. Exonation, www.griefdreams.ca. And we'll be back on the other side of this break as we continue here in the X Zone from our broadcast center and studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. I'm Rob McConnell. Don't go away. Exonation, Joshua Black is my guest this hour. His website is griefdreams.ca. So, Joshua, do you think that there's more to the dream, that there's an actual connection between the living and the dead?
That's one of the questions I get all the time. And it's so hard to say. I can't, as a academic, I can't test that, right? It's not something I would need to know. Like, I'd be able to talk to the deceased, but if I did that, we wouldn't need dreams, right? But just personally, like, I've seen so many things that are just, it makes me question that. It makes me sit in that mystery of life, of what's going on here, because there's something different than regular dreams when it comes to dreams of the deceased. There's a sense of love that's really different, right? As we were talking about the self-help, it's like, why don't we do that more often? Like, if this is something that we can do, why is it only when someone dies that we get that sense? And how come these dreams can be so powerful to us? Like, I've had, people who are just like down in the dumps, sort of like me, right? Or people who, wanted to die by suicide. And they had these dreams, and all of a sudden it's like a 180, and it just changes them like nothing else. It's like, I always say, it's like 10 years of psychotherapy. Like, something's going on in these dreams. So either something that chemically, right, that the body's releasing, that it's, it's very rare, or there's something sort of spiritual going on here. And I can't discount either one. But it's really interesting, some of the dreams I do get when it comes to the deceased, on what they talk about or how they say things, to the deceased and they talk about heaven, or they'll talk about like the afterlife. And I've even had like a bunch of people say they have these dreams of the deceased prior to knowing they're even dead. So this is sort of the really weird thing, right? So as much as it's like comfort stuff, though, these people, they don't know the person's dead yet. And yet they have these dreams. Either it could be like a couple hours or a day before they get notified that the person
So we're talking
died.
about a precognitive dream.
Yes, that's what we're talking about. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's very interesting. So it makes me like you scratch my head and say, how is this going on? Because this is different, right? This is very interesting of what's going on. Even I've heard other dreams where the deceased will tell of a future loss that's going to occur, and that's sort of the precog thing. But whatever happens, like these dreams with the deceased present tend to be extra special in the sense of other dreams we're having.
All right, as a scientist, what have you been able to test and confirm in the lab, in the sleep labs?
So one of the big questions, so I'm not actually in the sleep lab, but one of those things that I looked at.
Wait a second, let me ask you, if you don't do any research in a sleep lab, how do you know what's going on?
Oh, we got our own lab, and we do questionnaires. So we're using questionnaires. So we're not actually putting them like in a sleep lab to look at what the brain's doing when they have one of these dreams. That's probably something you'd want to do in the future for sure. But like we're at the really like beginning blocks of understanding these dreams. So the easiest way to do that is to look at questionnaires and to ask people what's going on.
And is there any way that you vet or verify what the person is telling you?
Well, when it comes to any kind of like questionnaire research, we're just, we're hoping they're telling the truth, and that we don't want them to lie. And at the end of the day, we have sort of mechanisms in there to sort of know if people are say lying based on sort of the data. But overall, I think people are generally, they're nice, and they want to sort of share their experiences to, further their own grief process, right, to help in their own journey. Because helping others through this research helps them in the sense of coping and finding meaning after their loss. So the one study the one topic we looked at that the bereaved want to know was, why are some people having these dreams and other people aren't? And so the issue with that was a lot of people who were spiritual that didn't have these dreams were actually complicating their grief in different ways. So they would say that I'm not having a dream, and that's because my loved one, they didn't make it to heaven, like they made it to hell, and so they're stuck there and they can't contact me. Other people are saying maybe they're in purgatory, or maybe they just forgot about me. Maybe there's just like other things going on, they can't see me. And then like another common one where people are saying that they're angry at me because I had to maybe sell the home or something. So they complicate their grief because they haven't had these like confirmation dreams.
Sounds like these are very self-centered people.
I don't know if they're self-centered, but it's just, this is grief, right? Like when we love someone, especially if we're spiritual, we want to know that they're safe, right? And I remember my mom always, even to this day, if I go somewhere, she's like, call me when you get there, or send me a text, right? And I think that's the same thing. It's just we care a lot about these people, and we want to know that they're okay.
But if you're spiritual, your faith should be able to carry you through.
That's the hope. But we're human, and no one has like that 100% faith. But that's the goal, right? And so we work with people where they're at.
What are the common threads between people who get to this point in grief where they need these dreams, where they need the visitation, where they need the contact?
Well, I think it's it's usually right in the beginning. Everybody they want that, right? And it's because you're in such deep sorrow. And it's such a, grief's such a hell of a thing. And people who like go through it, it's like, what do? You want to just be with them again. You want everything to be back to the way it used to be, but it's not. So there's so many changes that's going on inside you, and you really, you need help, and you're wanting help, and you're basically usually the person who's died has helped you cope in other losses and other things that have been going on in your life. Now they're gone. This is why.
I was just going to ask you, is it because instead of celebrating the person's life, we grieve at their life, that we grieve at the loss instead of celebrating the accomplishments and what the person has done in their life?
Well, I think, like our culture's trying to go that way, but I don't know if that's even, because it's really based upon, like, why do we grieve is I think based on attachments. It's based on our love that we have for people and how they make us feel. And it's like, yes, we can celebrate, but you're still going to have to mourn because you can't really skip that process. And when some people try to do that, they actually become worse later on because they're really avoiding the sadness. And
But-
so this is the issue, right? Like when you talk about avoiding, because you can celebrate and celebrate and celebrate, but if you don't actually connect with the sadness that they're gone, well, you're really avoiding those emotions.
But who says we have to be sad? Why can't we be happy? And like I said, take a positive look. The person has, whoever they are, they've done good in their lives. So instead of, mourning the loss, and like the Irish, they have a great way. They don't mourn, they celebrate. They celebrate when a person passes. They celebrate the life. They celebrate the good. Isn't it possible that by using the good, the positive aspects of the person's life, that we can overturn the grief into fond memories, and by doing this, the hurt, the emptiness won't be as severe?
Yeah, I would think so. Yeah, it won't be as severe, but it's still there, and this is the whole point of all of it, right? Like I'm not saying it's not there, but I'm saying it's like you still got to connect with that. And if we avoid even the sadness, that can cause a little trouble for us in the end, because avoidance is such a negative quality when it comes to living life and coping and thriving in life. So yeah, celebration I think is great. And I think, they've done a lot, like our loved ones, our pets, they've done so much to us as a whole to get us to where we are. And that's why I love celebrating. I celebrate my dad all the time, but I still have these triggers and these moments that the sadness comes in. And when it does, I sit with that and I cry, and it might not last long, but I acknowledge it. And then I sort of get back to sort of that celebration. But it's like, we're not, certain people grieve a certain way, and some people are more into the sadness, and that's okay, right? Like everyone has their own way of grieving. But it's just like, what can we do to help each other out in the process? And when it comes to normalizing the loss, that's what these dreams, and that's why I'm working with these dreams so much, it's to like help that area of people if they have questions, or like figuring out like, oh, is it helping them and why? Because you say like celebrating these dreams, for the most part, are celebrating that love that they had together. So it's like, if you're not getting it in almost waking life, you're going to get it while you're dreaming, which is kind of cool.
But let me ask you this, my friend. If there are people who are coming to you and asking you why they're not dreaming, isn't this the focus we should be concentrating on? Is because the people who are dreaming obviously are getting some kind of therapy, whether it be self-induced, a placebo effect or whatever. But the people who aren't having the dreams, these are the people who are having the problems because they're not getting the closure.
Yeah, well, that's why it's really interesting. So yeah, going back to that study, the 2 studies I did that I replicated. Anyway, so looking at why are some people dreaming of the deceased and other people aren't. And so those people who are dreaming of the deceased, what actually is the biggest predictor is dream recall. So it's those people who are remembering more dreams in general are remembering dreams of the deceased more often. And so what it tells me is that people are probably dreaming of the deceased more often than they're actually remembering. And so this is really interesting. So grief wasn't an aspect of it. So people who are having these dreams, they're not grieving differently, right?
I see.
Right?
They're just not remembering.
And there's different types of dreams too. You got to remember there are, even though most of these are positive, there are these negative dreams that people can have.
We've got to take our final break, so please stand by. Exo Nation. Joshua Black is our special guest. Now, listen, if you'd like to contact Joshua, and if you've had dreams, and after you go to his website and read what's there, and if you think that Joshua can help you, once again, here's the website: www.griefdreams.ca. That's www.griefdreams.ca. And we'll both be back on the other side of this commercial break as we wrap up this hour here in the X Zone from our broadcast center and studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. My name is Rob McConnell. Don't go away. Exonation, Joshua Black is our guest, www.griefdreams.ca. Joshua, before we went to the final break, we were just going to start talking about the different types of dreams. And you were saying that not all of these dreams are nice dreams.
No, and that's the mystery too. It's like, what's going on? Like, why are some people having these very beautiful dreams that are comforting them for the most part, and other people are having these nightmares of the deceased in different ways? And so some of the negative dreams people can have is so like you see the person dead, dying, or ill again. So it could be like they were in waking life, or it could be an exaggerated form, which is really sad to see. Like it breaks my heart when I have to read these things. And another one is the deceased is actually is causing discomfort in some way. So it could be they're chasing the person, they're trying to kill them, they're arguing with them. And so, like, why is that going on? And so when doing my research, I did a bunch of studies looking at this stuff. And so one of the main findings was these negative dreams, what's causing them, or one of the things that's associated with them, is trauma symptomatology. So people who are experiencing, trauma from the event, it seems like they're the ones who are having these types of dreams, and people who are also having issues with guilt or blame in regards to the grief. And so they're also related to having these negative dreams. So it's very interesting. So, when it comes to sort of therapy and those people who are having these dreams, some people, and this is the important part too, some people will take these negative dreams as visitations too. And this is the something that's come up a lot. And I really try to correct that and say it's probably has something to do with your grief, because knowing what I know about dream research. And so it always comes down to, something that's either their trauma, or it's something to do with the guilt or blame that they're holding on. That's causing this thing to occur. And I remember this one dream that a woman shared where her ex-husband who died, or her husband that died, was basically wanting all the money that she inherited, like really like attacking her for that and attacking her new boyfriend. And what she sort of said was, it sticks with me. Like, I don't know why he keeps doing this, And I said, is this person, is that what he normally was in waking life? She's like, no, it's like, he was always kind and comforting. But she's like, the thing that, really stays with me is this money, because I feel like I don't deserve the money. He had to work so hard, and I'm the one that gets to spend it. And I was like, oh, like that makes sense. So your uncomfortableness with this money, and realizing that he had to die for it is causing you so much distress that you haven't processed that yet. So it's coming into your dreams. And so my theory, or my understanding of how these dreams would go, is once you work on those issues, you're probably going to have more comforting dreams as you move forward in your loss.
So what do you do with these people? How do you help them?
Really is providing them guidance of understanding how these dreams connect to their waking life. And so no one teaches dreams in schools, right? So a lot of people are left to their own devices, and what they do is they go on the internet, and they Google something. Right. They go to a dream dictionary. And those aren't good at all. I don't recommend them at all, because everyone's life is differently and everyone's issues are different. And just by looking at the imagery and asking questions about, what's going on, you could connect it pretty straightforward to the person's life. They just need that help sometimes. And so I do that with people just for the hell of it, because I see it in my own life, and so I can help them too. And you could tell, like, it just takes a couple minutes, and then people are like, "Oh wow, I never thought of that," and they feel better, and then they get back onto their grief journey rather than trying to complicate it or worrying about something that maybe they don't really need to worry about, or to focus on something in therapy if they're in therapy, right, to then focus on that one issue because the mind's saying we need to look at this.
So do a lot of therapists today use Jungarian? He was a dream analysis expert, wasn't he?
Yeah, Jungian analysis. Yeah, that's one form of dream interpretation, and not everyone uses that. Most therapists don't use any kind of dream interpretation, but that's like its own school, just like Freudian has its own school. And so what I'm trying to get people to, like people who work with the bereaved, usually don't know anything about, or have never been trained with dreams at all, and they really don't have a want to. And so my whole goal is that, through this research, hopefully they'll know some information and be able to talk to their clients with these dreams and be able to help process them. Because if the deceased is in the dream, especially early in the loss, we could probably say it has something to do with their grief, right? Like, so it's not too far-fetched. So It's not like we're like pulling strings and trying to get stuff to connect. It's like, no, it's all here. So let's try to figure out how this works with your loss. And now that we know a little bit about negative dreams, that's going to be a little bit easier for them to sort of process with their clients. So I'm just trying to get it normalized and for people to start talking about it, because it's so weird that there's not a lot of information, but in pulp culture, they're everywhere. So in The Big Bang Theory, Sheldon has 4 specific different dreams in different episodes of Dr. Proton. It was in Beauty and the Beast. It was the Ant-Man. It was in so many different, Braveheart, right? Like, so there's so many things in pulp culture that promote what's going on, right?
Yeah, but there's also leprechauns and fairies and all these other strange things that really don't exist in pulp culture. So
no,
we really can't use
exist, right?
We really can't use pulp culture as a point of reference.
Oh yeah, we can, because people watch that, and if they watch that, they may want to have their own. Like, why am I not having a dream, or why? How come they're having that kind of dream? So it does. They're promoting it in the sense that it's occurring, but yet the research is way behind.
So
right?
where do we draw the line between fact and fiction, or reality and fantasy?
Well, I don't know. But when it comes to these dreams, you got to understand, like, people are saying that they exist. Mm-hmm. That's what pulp culture is saying. It's like, these exist. And my research is showing they do exist, and they're very common.
All right,
but
dreams,
yet,
dreams do exist, but that doesn't mean everything in a dream is real.
No, but the dream of the deceased, it's very specific to the deceased when these dreams happen. And it's a showcase of that, right? And what my research is showing is that they are common. And that's really exciting. That's new. So before that, it wasn't really the case, so people were seeing this stuff and they probably would want it, right? So there was a study that was done, and the 50% of people that never had a dream stated that they wanted one. That's a lot of people, if they've never had a dream, wanting one. And so you guys just see, like, even, what was the latest one? Paul McCartney actually just shared, I think a couple months ago, that Let It Be, that song, was based on a grief dream he had of his mom. And so, like, people are voicing these dreams. And so now it's good to have some information that we can actually share with the bereaved when they have questions on the topic. So that's the whole point of it. It's like, these dreams exist, and now we have some answers to go along with that they exist.
Tell me about Dreaming of Owl.
It's a book I wrote with my friend Deb Stapleford. So the other thing that I realized, and really fast, was children had these dreams also. And because children don't fully understand death and dying, so these dreams can really confuse them. And so I really wanted to write a book to help children understand that these dreams exist, and to help parents also understand how to talk about these dreams with children. And so it's a cute little story where there's basically an owl died, and Chipmunk and Bunny are in the forest, and they're telling all the other animals, and they tell these 2 foxes, and one fox has a dream and the other fox doesn't. And so it's his journey onto basically realizing he doesn't need a dream to love Owl and grieve properly. So it's a loving story. It's not that sad.
All right, so you were telling me before we went on air that you've got 3 weeks left. What do you do after 3 weeks? After you get your degree and you're a doctor, where do you take this? Where do you go from here?
Who knows, right? Celebrate. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to drink some Jack Daniels like you.
There you go.
Yeah, well, that's the beauty of this. I don't know, right? Like, so I'll probably do a bunch of talks in workshops. I've been doing that throughout this 4 years here. So I'll probably do that, try to do like a cross-Canada tour to really like get the information out there for people to be able to use in their practice and stuff, and for the bereaved to feel comforted and answer their questions. But beyond that, I don't know. Like, I really started this to find some answers for the bereaved, and I've done that. And so it's like, I feel it's very, like, I feel accomplished in that area, and we'll see what doors open as we move forward. But you said, as of right now, it's just really taking it all in and celebrating how long it's been and what I was able to accomplish in memory of my father.
So would you say that this was a healing process for you as well?
Oh, yeah. Like, I don't know where to be actually, without doing this. Like, I get to bring my dad everywhere I go with me. And I get to talk about him in my talks, and I get to help people in their time of distress. And like, man, like, what more can you want with that? And to be able to even do the podcast, we started the podcast, Grief Dreams podcast, and to hear people, they come on, they leave like refreshed, and you hear these stories and how that even benefited them. So I love being a part of people's lives and seeing the change that you can bring just by being yourself and holding compassion and space for them.
But is there a difference between holding compassion, giving them faith, and actually giving them facts? Or is it the placebo effect?
Well, we'll do a whole show on the placebo effect. But for the most part, it's holding space, allowing people to share what they need to share, and to talk about a subject that hasn't been talked about in their lives. For most part, most people never talk about these dreams that they've had because they're afraid people are going to judge them. They're going to say it's, you're not over your loss, that's why you're having it, or they want to say it's a visitation and they're not spiritual. So it's just like on the platform, it's just like whatever you want to believe, that's cool, and I'll talk about it with you in whatever way I can and help you out if you need it. Sometimes all people need is like, thanks for sharing. They just need that validation that someone cares.
All right, Josh, I want to thank you so much for joining us. And Exo Nation, if you'd like to contact Josh Black, www.griefdreams.ca. Obviously, he's never listened to the show before because we've talked about this many, many times. We've had Craig Webb on from the Dream Institute in Montreal. We've had other doctors who have come on to talk about this. So I think he's a little behind the times. But that's just my opinion. I'll be back on the other side of this commercial break with the news as we continue here in the X Zone from our broadcast center and studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. If you'd like to send me an email, xzone@xzoneradiotv.com, on all social media sites, Xzone Radio TV. And to find out what's going on the X Zone Broadcast Network, xzbn.net, and on Simul TV, Channel 21, that's the X Zone TV channel, www.simultv.com. I'll be back on the other side of this news break. Don't go away.